Rain pattered lightly on the windows of the old stone farmhouse, casting long streaks across the glass like claw marks. Inside, the flicker of candlelight danced on the wooden beams. A faint, musty smell of damp earth and livestock clung to the air. Sam Bedford, our captive, stayed tied to a chair in the centre of the room, soaked, shivering, but still smirking. Nick leaned against the wall, arms crossed. I paced. I couldn't help myself. Tom fiddled with a worn hunting knife, the tension bleeding from his fingers. Sophie sat stiffly, trying not to glare at the prisoner. James remained in the corner near the hearth, Todd in his hands. "You know what we're here for," Joe said. "Tell us what the hell is going on." Sam chuckled, lips split where someone had struck him. "You lot don't understand what you're interfering with. This isn't some posh countryside game. This is tradition. This is balance." James's voice crackled like dry timber. "My son was kidnapped, to be used like a sacrificial lamb for your little pagan cult. Balance?" He took a step forward. "You don't know the meaning of it." Sam turned his gaze on him. "The word took what it was owed. You should be grateful it didn't take more." Having enough of this nonsense, I slammed my fist on the table. "The word? Enough of that fairy tale bullshit?" "It's not a fairy tale," Sam whispered. "It's older than belief. Older than your churches, your cities, your paved roads. The rid is the forest. It's the rot and the regrowth. It gives and it takes. We just obey." Sophie's eyes narrowed. "You obey by kidnapping children? Sacrificing them to beasts and running through with hands?" Sam smiled again. "We prepare them. They become something more. Guardians. Vessels. They shed their humanity so we don't have to." "That's sick," Tom muttered. Sam ignored him. "Every redling was once a child, released into the forest. The word watches them. If they survive until the hunt, they are blessed. If they die, they are still given as tribute. That's the agreement." Nick stepped forward now, his voice quiet but fierce. "My dad was a terrier man. Fox hunts were our life. I get traditions, I get the land. But this is twisted. Even he'd never be part of this." Sam looked at Nick with something like pity, because he was blind as a mole to what the hunt really was. Later their evening, after Sam had been locked in the stable under watch, the group returned to the farmhouse kitchen. A bottle of whiskey was passed around, but no one drank much. The silence was heavy. "I never told anyone the truth," James said finally. His voice was raw. "Not even the police." Everyone looked up. "My twin brother, Luke. He was the first one I saw taken. I was 6. The last time I saw him in the woods behind the old vicarage when the horns sound. The hounds came first, screaming, barking. Then the riders, masks, red coats, blood on their coats." My face tightened. Sophie leaned in. "They grabbed him, took him. I remember my mother screaming, and I remember the forest swallowing him whole. That was the last time I saw." The room was silent but for the crackle of the fire. Sophie placed a hand onto the farmer's. "We'll get him back," she whispered. "I promise." The next morning came with a light drizzle. Today was devoid of birdsong. Sophie stepped outside, blinking against the fog. Something darted at the tree line low, quick and red. A flash of red, a little warbled passage with several drawn-out, fading notes. "Mr. Redbreast gone off again," Sophie muttered, half to herself. "Well, I think he wants us to follow." I joined her, rifle slung over the shoulder. "You really believe he's leading us somewhere?" "I don't know," he said. "But I've got a feeling." Nick spotted it first. Torn feathers, a fresh mallard, near the trees, left on a flat stone. A gift or a warning? Further in, the group found relics, half-buried masks, wicker cages, carvings in ancient stones, glyphs of man-beast hybrids with thorns for crowns. Tom reached for one, only to recoil. Still warm. The forest called to him. It always had, but now it sang to his blood. No matter how he tried to break free of his iron containment, no matter how he tried to chew at the bars, Michael was not a boy anymore, not in body or mind. He moved like mist through the trees, muscles and fur and instincts. The hound's scent lingered on the wind and it made his skin prickle. He remembered a time, vaguely, when he'd had a name. A toy. a voice that read stories in a soft country drawl, a garden with carrots and tomatoes, a dog barking cheerfully. Now those memories were flickers, scattered like bird bones. The others, the hunters, were nearby. He could smell their sweat and smoke, their new methods. Some carried smouldering urns that cast thick plumes, choking the undergrowth. Some laid false trails. Some had bagged foxes to let them loose and blood the hounds. The redling hated them. He remembered the fear. He remembered being dragged from somewhere that's now fuzzy to him. He remembered and now he would become the hunted. He crouched in a corner, his muscles twitching, and saw him, the master of the hunt, the one with a smile of a fox trap and a tongue like a snare. At dusk, Sophie sat alone outside the farmhouse. She stared at the edge of woods, arms wrapped around herself. She'd stopped denying it. This place was wrong. It was ancient, alive. She saw them, the trees, bending slightly, even when there was no rustle. She heard voices in the rustle, felt her pulse match of the beat of something deeper, older. The word. I joined her, crouching by her side. "You all right?" I asked. Sophie didn't answer at first. I used to think things like this were stories, just weird old traditions that we needed to end. But now, I don't know. What if the land remembers? What if it fights back? Behind her, the wind howled. No, it spoke. A syllable she didn't understand. Yet somehow, she felt it was her name. That night, the redling overlooked the valley, muscles tensed. And there it stood, at the edge of the woods. The word. A towering shape cloaked in bark and shadow, antlers formed of tangled roots, hollowed eyes, staring directly at him. The animals, deer, foxes, birds, even a hare, gathered around it like children before an ancient god. And it nodded once. The redling understood. The time of the hunt was near. The farmhouse was still, its walls breathing a quiet, uncomfortable calm. My eyes snapped open with a start, a faint creak of floorboards echoing from downstairs. I rushed down, fearing the worst, finding a door to the makeshift holding room ajar. Sam Bedford had broken free, his restraints torn to shreds, and now was standing over James with a knife in hand. "You'll regret this," Sam spat, eyes wild. "You'll regret everything. The word will reclaim what's its own." James, already battered and bruised from yesterday, struggled to rise from his chair. His hand grasped for Todd, his son's fox plush, a fragile piece of the past. With a roar, James lunged forward, his shepherd's crook crashed into Sam's ribs, knocking the knife from his hand. I was on Sam in an instant, pinning him to the floor. Nick grabbed the knife, casting a grim look at the cultist. "You're not getting away this time, prick," Sam snarled, twisting in Joe's grip. "The word is coming. You're all dead, even the redling." A cold chill ran through the room at the mention of the redling. James glared at Sam, voice low and threatening. "We've had enough of your games, Sam." But Sam was too wild. With a final desperate thrash, he slipped free, dashing toward the open door. I was quick enough to, pulling him back inside, and with some help from Tom, we managed to subdue him again. But this time, Sam had given them a parting gift. The truth, twisted and unrelenting. "The word. You think you've escaped it? It's always watching. It's always there," Sam muttered, his eyes unfocused. "It's in the land, the trees, the stone, the redling." Once Sam was taken care of, we set out into the woods, our feet heavy in the cold morning air. The wind whispered through the trees as if the forest itself was alive, watching their move. James led the way, his hand still clutching the plush fox tightly. He knew Michael was caged, a prisoner to the cult, to the tradition. He was hidden in an ancient stone clearing, the cage rusted and surrounded by tangled ivy and symbols carved deep into the earth. The word's mark was everywhere here, and it had been for centuries. Darrow and his followers had long since set up camp, and the air was thick with anticipation. The ritual was about to begin. The glade was still, cloaked in pre-dawn shadow. but the hush was brittle, the kind that comes before something breaks. In the clearing stood a cage, black iron, shaped like a haunting trap, cruel in its craft. Inside, the redling crouched, bare-skinned and filthy, his limbs taut as twisted branches. His eyes, once human, were golden now, bright, alert, and far away all at once. Around him, the hunt assembled. Men and women in antique red jackets, masked with bone, bark and boar's tusk. They carried polished horns and hunting crops, boots gleaming even in the dirt. Some on horseback, others with hounds snapping at their heels. Smoke curled from torches burning with a greenish hue. Lord Darrow stepped forward. He stood tall beneath a ceremonial antlered helm, and the hush around him was reverent. His voice, when it came, was cold and commanding. For centuries we have culled the wild, for order, for legacy, for man's divine place over tooth and claw. Today, once more, we will run down the redling and remind the land who holds the leash. Michael's body twisted, contorted. His eyes widened with pain as his form began to change. He groaned, his skin rippling, his fur sprouting along his arms and legs. His teeth elongated. His eyes glowed with a wild, feral hunger. Michael now looked more fox than human. He's ready for the hunt. A masked follower approached the cage. His hands trembled as he turned the key. The cage door creaked open. Michael did not move. A horn blew. The hounds snapped at their leashes, howling in anticipation. And the forest answered. We lay hidden in the brush. The plan was chaos, tripwires, smoke flares, interference, anything to interrupt the ceremony and save Michael. But already it was slipping away. I should have stopped this decades ago, he whispered. Michael, my boy, I should have saved you. Michael ran, not like a boy, but like a creature forged by thicket and thorn. He darted through the trees, leapt rocks, veered into shadow. The hounds bellowed behind him. Horses thundered. Let the hunt commence, Darrow bellowed. Smoke bombs cracked and hissed. The cult's grotesque trail hunt, blending real sense with old blood, fox piss and burning herbs. But suddenly, something changed. The air shifted. The undergrowth moved. A black fox darted across the path, not away from the hunt, but towards it. Then another. Eventually what seemed to the entire local fox population keep charging from the woods. And then everything broke loose. A badger lunged from beneath a hedge and bowled over a hound, soon joined by his family. A fallow deer herd charged at the steeds with antlers lowered, like spears of bone and burr. Sparrowhawks, buzzards, kestrels and tawny owls shrieked and dove, talons flashing. Magpies, crows, rooks, jackdaws and jays screamed overhead, pecking riders at their heads and at their eyes. A stoat leapt into a boot and bit deep. Mice, rats, voles, weasels, rabbits, hares, a polecat, and even a bloody otter, they all poured from the forest canopy. The little beasts swarm the bootstraps, while panicked horses rear. From the branches, squirrels leap onto the heads of the riders, biting at noses and ears. Even more surprising was some of the village's cats and dogs seemed to have joined the natural forces. A murmuration of starlings, wood pigeons, tree sparrows, bullfinches, goldfinches, blue tits, great tits, dunnocks, wrens, and even pipistrelles clouded the forest eaves. A swan tackled a hunter to the ground, beating her into submission with his wings while a heron's eerie cry pierced the woods. The robin from before lands briefly on James' shoulder, then darts into the fray. The hounds, once bloodthirsty snarling beasts, halted mid-lunge, ears twisting. A low whine shivered through their ranks, a flicker of recognition deep in their amber eyes. Then, as if some innocent memory awoke in their marrow, they turned. With guttural snarls, they wheeled around and threw themselves at their handlers, biting hands that once beaten them, dragging down red-jacketed riders as foxes lunged from the bracken to join them. Screams filled the air, curses swallowed by the thundering cries of jackdaws and buzzards. Deer barreled into fleeing cultists. Birds pecked at faces. Rabbits and hares tripped running men. Even the stoats and weasels leapt like shadows from the ferns, slashing at ankles with needled teeth. We blinked, stunned even, to think that the local ecosystem was fighting back, until Tom yelled, Don't just stand there like Belens. Help them! With whoops and howls, we surged forward into the chaos. Sophie snatched a fallen riding crop and swung it at a hunter trying to raise a horn. Nick tackled a masked figure, wrestling a barn owl off his shoulder. Tom and Two Deer leapt aside as a massive branch cracked by smoke and chaos came crashing down, separating the hollow from the path to escape. No one's leaving, he muttered grimly. Good. A voice rang out, manic and sharp. View halloo, tally ho. It was Darrow. His hunting coat torn, eyes wild, he had broken off from the fray and was sprinting uphill, crashing through underbrush with his whip raised high. And ahead of them, leaping, half fox, half boy, was Michael. The redling's mine, Darrow screamed, voice cracking with unhinged glee. The blood shall run, the land shall remember. Shit, James, I shouted. He's after your boy. James turned like he'd been stabbed. No, no. He bolted, faster than I had ever seen him move for a man of his age. I followed after him, my heart hammering against my ribcage, dodging low branches, stumbling over exposed roots slick with blood and moss. Behind us, the battlefield howled with fury, but ahead was a sacred terror. The redling's breath burned. His limbs didn't move like they once did. Pads where fingers used to be, claws gripping the wet leaf litter. The world smelled alive. Every leaf, every pulse of fear, every whisper of blood. You could hear him behind. The master of the hunt, Darrow. The forest throbbed like a heartbeat around him. Trees shimmered, and shapes danced just beyond the edges of sight. His thoughts tangled. He knew he had been something else, someone, once. But it was like trying to remember a dream with cold water poured into your ears. But then something shifted. He had looked back, just once, and seen the twisted mask of Darrow, whip raised, howling the old cries of the hunt. And it wasn't fear he'd felt. It was hatred. Branches tore at their coats. James was bleeding from the temple but didn't slow. I could barely keep pace, panting, his side burning. There, James gasped. Up the ridge. Darrow was gaining on Michael, his coat house streaked with mud and blood, face white and eyes wide with zealotry. The farmer screamed, "Leave my son alone, you parasite." Darrow didn't turn. He was shouting again. Tally-ho! The blood must run. James surged forward and with a roar tackled Darrow from behind. The two men tumbled down a slope, crashing through the brittle leaves and roots. They grappled. Darrow fought like a man possessed, eyes glowing with fanatic flair. "You don't understand," he spat, wrenching his arm free. "He is the gate. The word demands it." "You're a monster," James snarled, slamming his fist into Darrow's face. Above them, James staggered to his feet and looked through the trees. There, crouched beneath a thicket of dogwood, panting, eyes wide, was his son. "Michael," James choked, stepping forward. The man before him smelled of earth, sheep, and sorrow. That scent, that voice. "Michael," the man whispering again, kneeling, offering a small toy fox. His fingers trembled. "It's Dad," the man said. A flash, a memory, hands lifting him high. Laughter, mud pies, sheepdogs barking. Michael blinked. The forest swam. He stepped forward, then stopped. A voice from him whispered. The word had arrived. At the tree line, cloaked in a body of vines, antlers, bones, moss and birdsong, the word stood. Its face was a shifting tapestry. The fox skull, the owl eyes, bark and starlight. It said nothing, just watched. Michael turned, breath-catching. Behind him, foxes and hounds stood together. To his side, James, arm outs, whispered his name. Below, Darrow struggled in the mud as I held him down, teeth gritted. The choice burned in his chest, and the redling remembered who he was. The word loomed at the forest's edge, half seen, half felt, like a storm made flesh and folklore. Its antlered crown shimmered with leaves that moved through there was no wind. The robin nested in the crook of its branches. Owls blinked slow and wide from the hollows of its chest. Darrow broke free from my grasp, bleeding and gasping. He stumbled to his knees before this being. "I only did what was needed," he stammered. "I upheld the old rites, the blood, the hunt. It wasn't for me, it was for you." He stretched out a trembling hand. "Master, please, I served you. I kept the pact. The boy was the offering." The word stared, unmoving. The forest fell silent. Then slowly it stepped forward. Darrow whimpered, crawling backwards. No, I'm loyal. I did it for the land, for order. They're the trespassers, not me." The word reached out and touched him. Darrow screamed. His limbs bent and folded, bones snapping like firewood. His flesh peeled in shifting waves. White fur spilled across his body like snow on stone. His voice shrank to whimpers, paws thrashing in the autumn leaves. Within seconds, Darrow was a white fox, panting, eyes wide with terror. There came the sounds, padding feet, soft and circling. The black fox stepped from the shadows, regal and grave, eyes gold like ancient amber. It nodded once. Behind it came dozens, red foxes, flanking on both sides. And then, from the thickets, the hounds, their loyalty reborn and belonging to the word, stepping forward without snarling. They didn't lunge. Darrow froze, then, sensing what was happening, fled. The foxes followed. Then the hounds. A hunt in reverse, not to kill, but to cast out. A sentence from the woods itself. Darrow vanished into the trees, chased from the hollow, never to return. Michael watched, breath held. James stepped closer. "You remember me, don't you?" Michael looked down at the toy fox, now muddy in the farmer's hand. Slowly, he reached out, clawed, trembling, and took it. A shiver passed through his body, not of cold, but of memory. He let out a noise, a quiet, croaking sound, not quite human, not quite fox. The he leans forward and rested his head against James' chest. James sank to his knees, tears streaming down his face. He cradled the boy, whispering, "It's over. You're home." The clearing was littered with broken masks, broken illusions. We stood in silence, bloodied, bruised, but together. Around them, the wildlife slowly withdrew, birds taking to the air, deer vanishing between the trees, small mammals disappearing like shadows. James rose, keeping one arm around Michael. "What happens now?" he asked hoarsely. Nick wiped mud from his brow. "We tell everyone in the village." Tom looked out over the trees. "Will they believe us?" The word is gone. The air had changed. Lighter, older, as if something terrible and sacred had passed. Sophie looked to the tree line, where the last foxes had vanished. "Maybe they don't need to," she murmured. "Maybe the land already knows." Epilogue, 1 year later. The hollow is quieter now. No horns, no hounds, no red-coated riders. No children vanished beneath the boughs. There are still whispers, of course. There always will be. Old stories cling to the bones of places like Harlow's Hollow. But the village breathes easier. Gardens bloom fuller. Livestock stay unbothered. Children play at the wood's edge without flinching at shadows. Some say there's a boy walking with foxes at dusk, barefoot, russet-haired, eyes bright and watchful, and with a little plush in his arms. He doesn't speak, but he sometimes leaves feathers, stones, or acorns on doorsteps like gifts. James watched from the porch, mug in hand, always waiting for his son to come home for dinner. Sometimes the boy returns. Sometimes he doesn't. And that's enough. As for me and the other saboteurs, we still speak of the word, quietly. Not as a god, not as a monster, but as a reminder that the wild is not forgotten, that the land remembers who treads it and how, and that one day, should cruelty rise again, so too will the forest